Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Keep It Spiritually Simple. Today's episode, again, we have Dr. Nancy, but we are talking about Ascendance, Profound Spiritual Wisdom, another amazing book filled with just profound nuggets and experiences of Dr. Nancy. And she's going to explain a little bit about this book today. But in the meantime, so that you don't miss any episodes, please like, subscribe, and share. Join our family here at Keep It Spiritually Simple. Also, go back and look at previous shows that we have on Spotify, Amazon, and YouTube, Sandra McEllis. So, again, welcome, Dr. Nancy. How are you today?
I'm fabulous. It's always a pleasure to be here with you.
Always a pleasure to have you, girlie. All right, let's just jump right in, shall we?
Okay. Um, Again, for those who may not want to get into much of reading, but this one actually is on Amazon Audible as well. And it's also on Barnes and Noble online. So, of course, Amazon, hardcover, softcover, ebook. So, those who like Kindle, Apple Books. So, I've tried to get it out on a number of platforms where people have access to it. So, well, we're going to start with a poem, and it's called Ascendance, which is the title of the book. So that's on page one. So I just thought it would be nice to start with the poem, and then we can move into the wisdoms, as they say. And again, this book is a little different. It doesn't have chapters, so it's not like other books where you have to read a whole chapter to get the wisdoms. This one is profound spiritual wisdoms. You open to any page for contemplation, insights, encouragement, and guidance. So it's one of those where it's just entries. You flip to any page. You can, first thing in the morning, you want some inspiration, or right before you go to bed, and or right before you go into a spiritual exercise. A lot of people have said they'd like to use this book for that as well. Okay, so again, the poem is titled Ascendance. Dancing with the beloved is sweet ascendance. Divine infinite love is seen within all, disguising itself within all creation. Break your connection with your false identity. See only my face as you walk through life. My lantern within shines brightly. You are so precious to me, worth more than all the fortunes. You are me in disguise, experiencing this frolic. I listen for what delights your soul. Direct mystical experience provides wisdoms of the non existence, ecstasy, purification. Love provides the glasses to see the invisible. Contemplate beyond the human temple body. Look deeper within. You are like a new lover. I created your beauty. I look to capture your attention. Uncover your outer reality. Saturate you in my love. Ascendance is like a slow dance together. I wait patiently for you, my lover, to come to me. My dear lover, completely give in to the beloved.
Beautiful.
Yes, there's a lot of imagery to that. It's almost like when someone's precious to you, you're always looking to be with them and have their attention and have that companionship and connection. And so that I just thought that was that feeling of, oh yeah, Creator created us and knows us so intimately, and of course would want to be with its creations. And so yeah, I just thought that was uh, nice, the symbolism and imagery in the poem.
Yeah, I always think of it as, when I back in 2017 early, I was able to meet my higher self and we merged. And I don't do anything without consulting. And it's just an amazing feeling of being accompanied by this divine love. that sort of this invisible guidance. Um, and so that's what this poem kind of reminded me of.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that we're always together.
Yes,
Even though
always.
we're off on this distant planet and in the Earth school, but it's kind of like the parents, they send the kids off to school and they know they're going to have some experiences while they're at school. It's some good, some bad, or what we label as bad. And so, people would say, well, why are you being so mean to your kids? You know they're going to have terrible experiences being maybe beaten up in school or laughed at or ridiculed or picked on. And you're like, but that's part of the journey, of going into school and being a part of learning to be a part of a culture, how to fit in and with the social norms and do's and don'ts, and as well as learning all the subjects. And so it's kind of the same way. People are like, why is God so mean to us? Sends us down here in the earth school where it's painful. It's gonna have lots of pain and suffering, but at the same time, there's a lot of joys, and there's a lot of learning experiences. And so I just think that's a higher perspective, because I think a lot of times people, they come to the Earth School and it's just, it can actually, for many, it can turn into a nightmare, because you get lost in it. And it's like going to the fair and you get lost in the fair and you can't figure out how to get out of the circus, out of the fair. So getting onto a spiritual journey that helps one sort out real from unreal, truth from untruth. That's huge. And to knowing, well, what is truth and what is non-truth? Well, truth is eternal, and anything that's temporary is non-truth. And so, the ego is part of that. The ego, the mind, the physical reality, that's all temporary school that we find ourselves in. And then we all really wake up, whether we've been on a path or not, but we have this definite awakening when you cross over the veil. Sometimes it's permanent for people before they realize, but the goal is actually to be able to cross and get beyond the veil of the ego. What do they say in the East? Die before you die. To have these mystical experiences, to have this connection, to have know your true identity as a divine being, and you're just in physical form, but the your true identity obviously is soul, your higher self. And so yeah, this whole most paths, when they start talking about the ego, now you're getting on a high enough path, because a lot of paths, spiritual belief systems, don't talk about the ego. So you're on a high path when they're talking about when the ego's on the radar, and the ego knows when it's on the radar. And it's like, oh no, get off of this path. Don't get on this path. I don't want to be exposed, because now it knows that it's going to have to serve the soul instead of the soul serving the ego. And that's where we have this huge transformation and enlightenment process. We're become enlightened as to our true identity, and spiritualizing the ego, and knowing who's doing the talking at all times. Is this my ego or is this my higher self? And So yeah, it's quite a process in the beginning. It can be difficult to try to sort out who's the one doing the talking, ego or the higher self. Who am I connecting with? Who am I resonating with at this time, at this moment? But that is part of the journey, is learning how to balance the two, to have balance where yes, you're in the world, but you're not of the world. You're living in the world, but you're also a spiritual being, and learning your lessons, passing your tests, going through your exams, doing your homework, getting your attainments. So yes, but I think at some point the ego gets on board. It gets spiritualized enough, and it gets on board, and it says, okay. We had talked about this on a prior episode. We were talking about the ego and stuff.
Hmm. Yeah, and I'm finding it funny because it's bringing up memories of when I first, congealed and molded with my higher self to be one. And I used to think, you have an owner's manual, you have an operations manual in your hand, meaning that my spirit guide, my higher self, my oversoul. And I used to say, what's it say? What do I need to do? Then I realized that I needed to help make decisions. So I would crawl up on the lap and sit on a knee and like look through the book. And then I would say, this isn't an operations manual at all. It's more about how to maneuver operations, be better at managing myself, you know? So,
Yeah.
it was just a metaphor of a book, kind of thing. But just congealing with that spiritual side of you, you will find that I think we maneuver in a whole different way than we do this physical by ourselves, fighting the world, living in this avatar kind of thing. So I appreciate you sharing all of that. I look forward to getting into
Yes.
this.
Oh yeah, yeah. We'll start right in. This is our first entry. It's on page 3. Um, Ascendance began before incarnating into physical life. This earthly life prepares one for the spiritual attainments. When a person is ready, the desire to enjoy the bliss of oneness with the divine comes. A higher reality is reached where the person stays with the divine presence. To stay in this higher reality requires absolute love and complete surrender. Now, there's a lot into this one, so we'll dive into this one a little deeper. And so, we usually think about this life and not what happened before we got here.
Mm-hmm.
And what ends up happening, which a lot of people may or may not realize in the audience, is that we didn't just get hurled to earth. There was meetings and meetings and lots of meetings before we incarnated into physical form on this particular planet, in this particular solar system, in this particular galaxy. So nothing is by chance. It's actually planned. You go through and you plan your lesson plans. You meet with your spirit guides. You also have an angelic guide on your team, and they'll go through, okay, these are your homework assignment. These are some of the things we want you to work on. And you've got an entire life, but try not to get caught up in the circus of life and lose your sense of purpose as to your goals and why you came to the Earth School. And so there's a lot of meetings. If people have never had an earthly life before, they try to warn them that this is going to be a little quite difficult because you're going to go into a lot of density. It's a very lower dimension being in the physical reality. There's going to be a lot of challenges, a lot of things to navigate. Some things are going to be get thrown at you at the last minute, pop quizzes, and then there's major exams. So of course, a lot of souls are like, no, I can handle it, don't worry. And they usually pile a lot on themselves. And it's usually the spirit guides that says, no, we don't want you to give yourself so much that you end up committing suicide and quitting school. It's got to be not so intense. And then you'll meet some people who you'll say, wow, they had such an easy life. And those are usually the ones that had a very tough life the life before. So they get a little bit easier of a life this time. I think part of it is to ease them back into earthly life. There are souls, I've had a number of medium friends, and I'll give you an example. I was having a conversation and they never named names, but they said, yes, I had this client and she wanted to connect with her sister on the other side who had recently passed, like maybe, I don't know, a year or so ago. And so she came and to the medium, and the medium was having a very hard time getting her sister's energy to talk to the sister who was in this reality trying to connect with her. And it wasn't that they had a good relationship. It was just that the one on the other side had such a horrific life here that she didn't even want to come back to Earth to communicate with her sister. So she was like, oh no, if I have to come back, I'll come to another planet, some faraway star system or something, because she just did not like the Earth, her earthly life at all. And so he was able to, coax the the spirit, the soul that was her sister on the other side to communicate with her. But she really Dave, there wasn't a lot of interaction. I mean, she was happy to be on the other side, and she wished her sister well, but her attitude was, well, please don't contact me because I don't want to have to get pulled back to the earth plane again. And So, we have a lot of souls that they experience a lot here, and it can be, quite difficult. And then there's others, they just keep coming back. They just see it as a great adventure. There's so many things you can learn in the Earth School. The intensity is really, really tough. That's why I call it Green Beret training down here, spiritual Green Beret training, because it can be very, very intense. Um, so yeah, that I just wanted to throw that out about how there's a lot of planning that goes into your life here, and we plan it together with our team. I call it our team, which is our spirit
Mhm.
guides and angelic guides.
No, I'm right there with you. I know that that's true. I've gone there in past life regression work. I've gone there in meditation work where I've wound up in
Hmm.
situations in this lifetime where I'm stumped or I finished assignments and I don't know how to maneuver forward. So I've wound up back in that classroom watching all of the process of other people designing what was going to happen, and my pages were blank because I had completed assignments, but I
Hmm.
still had to stay in the earth plane and finish my life here. And I remember it being so frustrating because I thought my life needed to be pages on a book and they needed to be filled. But my dragon came in and showed me, nope, you can just put a little footprint here and a little footprint here and a little footprint here, and then things will open up and show you more. And then I wound up on the top of the mountain with the Yeti, and the Yeti was like, "You ready?" And I was like, "I guess so." So boom, back in my body I came, accepting that my life at this moment at the time was what I felt was empty, like I wasn't getting direction. It gave me a better idea of like, oh, sit still, allow it to open and show you. It doesn't have to be the way it was before,
Hmm.
and I can also help design it in a little better way that suits me. So creation was created for me, allowing me to surrender to just creating the smallest of things in order to take a step forward.
Yes, it's funny. I've had a similar experience when I experienced divine union, also known as God realization, and you experience that oneness. You get to see a lot of things, like people going through life review. Another one is what we were talking about, planning their life, meeting, sitting down and going to meetings with their spirit guides before they incarnate. They want you to see a lot more of the inner workings that goes on behind the scenes on the other side. With regards to souls, many of us needed to incarnate in physical form because we needed to have the experience. We came up through other systems. We've not been in a human life before. There's so much going on. There's a lot of different souls from different galaxies and star systems that come into the Earth School. So there's a lot of everyone's here doing different things, and we can't just look at one person and say, oh, you're not doing it right, or it's just because everyone's journey is so unique that it's what you came here to experience. In fact, that's why they call it a hologram or a matrix, is because this holographic reality was your classroom. It's made and designed just for you and each individual soul that comes here. So it's kind of cool that we're so special and unique that we each get our own holographic classroom and we participate in this school, but it's designed just for us. And that's why they'll say that not one person on this planet will have the exact same day, even if you're riding around with this person, because your perceptions, how you view things, what comes to you, what you experience, the interactions, it's really incredible, the whole journey and experience, and what souls really are impacted with, and what they have to experience, what they need to learn. And many souls that have been here for a lot of times. My Reiki master teacher, master soul teacher, she said she'd been here 900 times. I was like, 900 times? Why would you want to come back here 900 times? She goes, oh, I love it. You know, these are the old souls. I think they're really preparing to be spirit guides themselves for other souls on the other side. So they have to have so many lifetimes. They have to experience so many different things in so many different ways. They have to literally master, I think, life here in the physical reality to be able to handle and navigate. Because here's the thing, people don't realize is, okay, you meet with this team and then you go to Earth. Well, it's not like they disappear. They're with you through life. Now you have some guides that'll switch in and out depending on what your needs are. But then you have like from what I saw was five guaranteed, five stay with you your entire life from birth to death, or I should say transition where you cross over the veil because we never die. We're divine beings. So so these guides will be there to help you navigate, introduce you to certain people, experiences, but they're also standing around waiting for us to give them direction. So it's like they can't invade your free will. So a lot of times when people reach out and say a prayer or put an intention out into the universe, they're connecting with their spirit guides, which is great because the spirit guides they're there to give them direction. I mean, yes, they're there directing you anyways, but a lot of times you'll say, you know, I really need help on this situation that I find myself in. And I'll put them to work. And I'll say, okay, I need to get in touch with this person. I've sent them 2 emails. They've not emailed me back. And then I say, start working on them because I need to get this taken care of. And sure enough, you know, later that day or the next day or within 5 minutes sometimes, I'll get a call or an email back in response to getting that situation taken care of. That's, you know, a lot of times us souls are in training to be able to not just do our missions, but a lot of us come back and that was another thing too that I was told on the other side during my sacred ceremonies, but also through a particular medium, was that you don't have any karma. You didn't come here because you had karma. You came here to serve, and it's service to the divine plan. And so many of us come back. We've gone through all the tests, the lessons, the exams, and passed all those, and reached our attainments. And so we're still here in physical form. And I think a lot of it is just your presence, your energy still being on the planet is so needed. And those that are very bright in the light counteract the darkness of what's going on in the world. So you kind of need this balance where you have to have these souls that are, whether it be prayer warriors, light warriors, whatever you want to call them, but they definitely serve a purpose here, even if they're pretty much done with their assignment and their mission, or sometimes they pick up another assignment for them. They'll say, okay, well, we really need some help with this. And so a lot of times you know, souls that come here, actually, it's not always to burn off karma. Sometimes it's for service to the divine plan and to complete their missions because what they have to do is prove themselves. They were on the other side and they said, okay, I'm ready to be tested. So we're like, okay, well, we got the place for you. And we'll throw you into the Earth School. And this will definitely be the acid test because, you know, with these assignments that you need to do, it'll show us that you're ready. And then, you know, once you complete your earthly life here, then you'll probably get another assignment into some far-flung galaxy somewhere, or maybe not in physical form. You know, we're pure source energy. So we can move very easily in and out of certain dimensions, do a lot of the things that's needed on the other side as well.
That's very powerful. I'm right there with you. I agree 100%. And, that's why we can't judge someone else's life because we do not know what experiences they are to be going through, right? Our thing is to work on ourselves, stay in our lane, develop that before we put our antennas out, trying to sniff and smell everybody else's butt and see what they're doing.
Yes. It's funny, you bring up a good point. I had a friend, she had a daughter that I think it was, I think she was deaf and I think she was blind. And then she was, asking, she went to a medium and she asked, what was the purpose of, my child being born with these disabilities? And what ended up coming out was that with this particular soul, that this soul was on the earth school in a prior life. It was a male, and he was very controlling. And so he had to come back and experience what it was like to have no control, where other people had to have total control over him. And therefore, he had to experience the opposite to kind of balance out what I guess a prior life had caused in him. So I just thought that was very interesting because, like you were saying, you don't know a lot of times why these souls come into the earth school the way they do, what they're meant to experience. And it wasn't like a form of punishment. It was actually was a rebalancing of the energies because he was so on one sided under power and control that he needed a lifetime where he had no power and no control. And he had to rely on the care of someone else and learn what that would be like, that experience. So I had to throw that out because that's what it brought to my mind when you were talking about, we really don't know why. I mean, like another one is, a child will come into this life and after like 2, 3, 4 years old, it dies. And sometimes in its sleep, sometimes it's not by an accident, sometimes the accident is its exit point. But then, the parents will go to, let's say, a medium and they'll say, well, what was the purpose? I only got 4 years with this child. And they said, well, they were just wrapping up their karma and they only had 4 years left in the
Mhm.
physical plane that they had to accomplish. And so after 4 years, they were done. So we think, oh, the soul was cheated not having a full life. But a lot of times they're just wrapping things up and they only needed 4 years to wrap things up. So we need to kind of start looking at things from a higher perspective, from the overall perspective, and not maybe just from what our personalities or our egos is looking at. And of course, it's heartbreaking for parents to lose a child, but I think it's nice for the parents to have a deeper understanding. It's like, oh, that's why. I only had 4 years. This soul only had 4 years left to wrap things up and take care of and experience and do. And, then they realize, well, cherish the 4 years that you had with the soul. It's not something that you can't visit on the other side in your dream states. A lot of people go and right before they go to bed, they'll set an intention. Okay, I'm gonna go visit my parents if let's say the parents have crossed over. And how do you know that? Well, usually when you wake up the next morning, the first thing that comes into your mind is your parents. And a lot of times we can get emotional because we're like, oh my gosh, you just inherently know who you spent the evening or the night with. And so yeah, I think it's good that we're going in through these spiritual wisdoms. I think a lot of people are going to get a lot out of them because they're going to see it from a whole different perspective.
Oh, absolutely. I think many of us are locked down into this physical plane that this is all you've got, right? You're born into this hard shell and you live this life that has a lot of knocks. And and then at the certain age you start to decline and then you wither away and you exit. And that's not what it's all about at all once you get into the spiritual side of it. And yes, I think especially in situations like a loss of a child or a loss of a parent or a loss of something certainly has a lot bigger message that we're ever aware of. And if we take a moment to step out of that lower frequency of feeling like a victim, something has been done to us and we feel bad for someone else who had to exit the planet. And if we can turn it around, we can look at it as I am so glad that we chose that I was going to be your mother, your father, your sister, your brother during the few years you were here on the earth plane. And, carry on back to space and come on back down if you want to another time. You would look at things differently,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think it's important that we just realize that we do not know what someone else's situation is or why they're living the life that they're living. And even if it's one of dis-ease, including addiction or whatever it may be, grumpy pants, you're always a grumpy pants person. You don't know if that person is stuck in a syndrome or they're living through something they need to go through,
Mhm.
right? So thank you for sharing that.
Yes, and we're still working on this one. We
Yes.
got through the first sentence. The
Yeah.
second sentence is the earthly life prepares one for spiritual attainments. Okay, well, let's talk about spiritual. What are spiritual attainments? I run into people and they're like, I never heard of a spiritual attainment. What's a spiritual attainment? And I said, well, these are things that attainments, we could throw these terms out: enlightenment, cosmic consciousness, self-realization, and God realization. We can talk a little more about those, but those are the physical, those are attainments that you have to experience in physical form because it's too easy to do it on the other side. So you come to the earth school because you've got all these challenges, all these temptations, you got the physical life, you got the mental life going on, the emotional life, you got all this, distractions and everything, and you can get lost in this circus of life, and then you kind of forget why you came here and don't do your spiritual attainments. And it's not like you get punished or anything like that. It's just when you cross over and you go through life review, you're disappointed that you spent too much time in the playground and not so much time in class and doing homework. So these spiritual attainments, you'll see these souls very young at life. They'll jump right in. They have this sense of knowing that, oh, I got a lot to do here, and they'll get lost in the world for a while, and you're meant to have this physical experience, and then there'll become a time of 20s, 30s, 40s. Sometimes people have to finish their career, raise their children. Now they've got the time to be able to get into a deeper spiritual life. Some are able to navigate it right away and to balance between life, family life, work life, and spiritual life. And so you'll see different souls of all different ages stepping onto a path. And what I'm talking about is an inner path. It's not really an outer path. It's a path that you start on the path, but at some point you become one with the path. You are the path. There is no difference between you and the path. That's this whole oneness. And so this earthly life prepares one for spiritual attainments, whether people are working on them in this lifetime or the next lifetime. They get exposed to so much. So and one of the things is also is understanding and learning and how to navigate duality. So some of us have been to different dimensional, we come from, our origins come from different dimensional planes, that there is no duality. There is no space, time, matter. And so we're learning how to navigate those three. Plus, we're learning how to navigate duality, good and bad, night and day, male, female, everything's. So when we leave this school, we definitely are all masters of duality because we've had to live in it day in and day out. We're just so saturated with the everything is dual in nature. So that definitely will become masters. We get that sticker or that badge when we cross over. But yeah, there, and I think the other thing too is when we cross over uh, and translate, we're going to see a lot more than we can possibly perceive in this life. It's kind of like you can't always get all the answers while you're in the midst of it. It's like if you're in the soup, it's hard to step back and take a look at everything that's in the soup sometimes that you're really exposed to. Like one of the things is when you cross over, there's so many people that come to you and they say, "Oh, I'm so glad you're on the earth plane because you affected me in so many different ways. Like you gave me this encouragement. I'll give an example. I had a friend years ago, and she'd always wanted to be a nurse, and she was a coworker of mine at the time. I was working in corporate life at the time, uh, and she worked in the department with me, and we would just get quickly into deep conversations. Well, what ended up happening, she would always talk about California. This was in Florida that we were living and working and knew each other through work. And so I said, well, I know this isn't good for me, but I want the best for you. And you always talk about California. She had lived in California for a while and then she moved out to Florida because it was a little bit cheaper. And then I said, you need to go back to California and you need to go back to school. And years later, I got an email from her and she says, "Oh, I'm not, trying to come back into your life. I just want to let you know I did take your advice and I did go to back to school. I became an RN and actually she ended up becoming a psych nurse and she absolutely loves it. And she did go back to California to go back to school. And so I was just like, wow. And then the one thing that really caught me was she said the whole time I was in school and each time I wanted to quit, I always had your voice in my head saying, keep going. This is for you. I know you can do this. So we just don't realize how many times we touch so many people's lives. And hopefully we do it for as best we can. I mean, some people can misperceive, us trying to help them. We can't control that, but we do our part to encourage people and make a difference in their life. And it's always nice to feel like the world was a better place because we walked on it.
Yeah, and always keep in mind that whatever we're doing, and if we take it from that platform of our God self, we are lending healthier, higher influences versus the denser, just flapping your gums to talk. And what you're saying there is what you said had a big impact on her. And somewhere in her DNA, it resonated. And she took the courage to head back home and start over, and then to
Mhm.
reach out and let you know that how much you were saying influenced her in a higher positive way for her life. And that's awesome. It's awesome when we can mentor others by using our God self.
Yes, and it's also good to know that just sometimes even little interactions we don't even realize, giving somebody a smile, and that encouragement, and sometimes just our vibrational frequency on the planet. Sometimes we don't have to say anything at all, just our vibrational frequency, keeping it. And that's another reason too, like you were talking about, it's not about everybody else, it's also about working on ourselves. And because we want our frequency to be as high as possible. We want to help the plant life and the animal life and the bird kingdom and all these different kingdoms that we all resonate together with. And we make a difference. That's how special we are, is that we're all needed. All our frequencies are needed, but to most part, to keep it as high as possible. So we counteract the darkness, but we also help sustain life here on the planet.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes. So, then the next line is when a person is ready, the desire to enjoy the bliss of oneness with the divine comes. A higher reality is reached where the person stays with the divine presence. Now, this is a little bit easier to do once you get your ego spiritualized because the ego won't pull you out into the outer world. You're more likely to stay connected for longer periods of time with the divine presence. In the Western monks and nuns will call this practicing the presence, where you practice the beloved is with you at all time. It may be a particular master soul teacher that walked the planet in a prior life. It could be someone who's a current mentor, spiritual person that inspires us. But somehow it just could be source, knowing that source is with us, within us, and is in all and is all. And knowing that that presence is always with us, it's in the room with us, and so we can stay a lot more connected than when the ego is always running out. Oh, I'd like to go run here. I'd like to go do this. I got to go see my friends. So at this point, you get to where, well, I could see my friends, but if I don't see my friends, I'm fine either way. I'm fine if I see my friends. I'm fine if I don't see my friends. So you get to a point where it's just it's not so much a need. Like I'm feeling lonely, I got to run out and be with people. You're content to be with your own company because guess who the company is the divine essence. Um, and so that's why, you'll hear all these teachers talk about going within, going within. Well, the love is within, the courage is within, the inspiration's within. It's just us having access to it and being able to access these different states of being.
Yeah, and I think that we feel when we're reaching that and having conversation and dialogue with the source creator and whatever beings and guides and teams that are surrounding us, we have a sense of we're already complete. And
Mm-hmm.
so the external world doesn't carry the energy fields that we long for because we're missing something, because we're fully in homeostasis in a spiritual way that balances us in homeostasis in a physical way. So that we do less running to find because we find it from within.
Yes. Yeah, we've been able to connect at deeper levels. And so therefore, he made really good point on this physical life has like almost a dullness to it because it loses its luster. And especially when you've been to the other side and you come back and you're like, wow, this place is dull compared to the other side where it's just so bright and vivid. And you can see the difference between real and unreal, or the dream. They call this a dream world, or the Matrix, or a holographic reality. And one person said something I thought was kind of funny. It was like a video game. I was like, "Well, I never thought about that one." So, so yeah, it's so you start to have this, this, so you don't get lost in it as much because you just recognize it for what it is. Okay, I'm a divine being, I'm a soul, and I'm in this third dimensional reality, and I have to navigate, all these daily duties. But you can't get lost in it once you've awakened because it's like the cat's out of the bag. You can't go back to the bag when you're out of the bag. It's like once you're born, you can't get back into the womb. It's out. You're out.
Mm.
So yeah, that's
It's like leaving the house on a sunny day and you realize how amazingly beautiful it is. And you go back in your house and you're like, oh, this is dull. This is boring. Now I got to do this and that. I want to go back out there a while longer. Yeah.
yeah. So the last sentence is to stay in this higher reality requires absolute love and complete surrender. And what's the complete surrender? Well, really, it's the surrender of the ego running the show. To surrender the ego is it's not something you're going to be able to do in one day. This takes years and years and years. And as long as you're in physical form, you still have to keep an eye on that ego. That ego sometimes we're like, oh, she's not watching. I'm gonna slip out, and it knows when it's not being watched, and that's what they call being the watchman at the gate. You kind of have to sometimes keep an eye on the ego. But usually, when it's spiritualized, it can get a little facetious, but it kind of knows that the soul's in charge at this point, and it realizes there's an expression. It says the ego is a good servant, but a terrible master. And so we can spend an entire lifetime serving the ego, and it just constantly keeps running and running and running. Now it wants this, now it wants this, now it wants that. And it just, the soul wears itself out just trying to please the ego. But then once it flips and it gets spiritualized, and literally it'll flip, it'll go from, instead of looking down, it goes to looking up. And what that means, it's about ascension, and it's about serving the soul. And so yeah, there's a point in our life we get to a place where we recognize that now it's my time, and that's really the soul stepping up to say, okay, now it's about me. Now I'm going to run the show as a soul, as your higher self is saying this to the ego, and say, I'm tired of all this running around. It's not getting me anywhere. I want to do something that I can carry with me across the veil. So, as we know, nothing material can cross the veil when you translate, but all your spiritual attainments, all your spiritual work that you've done here, that you get to take with you, because that's spiritual energy that you've attained, that you've worked for, that you've accomplished, these goals and whatnot. And so all this spiritual work that you can take with you. So I think these the souls that really get it, they come to realize and start really diving into some of these deeper paths that are on the inner, where it doesn't really require so much going out and doing all these rites and rituals and things like that, but more going within and having this relationship with the divine essence we call source, or I say source, who goes by 10,000 names.
Awesome. I love it. I love it.
So that was just the first one. So
I
these
know
are really
it's
deep.
action packed and it's sparking, energy between us. So there's all these different, stories and scenarios that are being shared that I'm sure all the listeners can relate to.
Yes, yes. So I didn't know if you wanted to do one more
Let's
or
do one more and then we'll do another segment. Absolutely.
okay. So this next one, soul comes to know that true happiness comes from light and sound, attributes of source. The daily spiritual practice is the connection and remembrance of union with the infinite. All right, now, even though there's only two sentences, this one's deep. Um, okay, so soul comes to know it comes through true happiness through light and sound attributes of source. Okay, so we have source. And the attributes that there's only two that we get to experience down here in physical form, in this dimension, and it's light and sound. Because really, that's all we need at this dimension. Sound comes first, because you'll hear this even in Genesis. It will say that God's voice projected, which was energetic in nature, projected, and in the beginning was the Word, and the what was it, the word was with God and the word was God. In the Bible they call it word. In the East they'll call it chi, or they'll call it the life force. Modern terms is the audible life stream, the sound current. Pythagoras coined it as music of the spheres. I mean, there's all these expressions for basically light and sound attributes. So it's sound, it comes first, and the light comes out of the sound. So you'll hear people say in the beginning of the creation, there wasn't even light. It was just pure darkness. It was the void of creation. But yet it had all this potentiality of this energy that was there, that existed, but nothing had manifested yet. So first comes out the sound, this sound wave, this sound that from source, and then light came from the sound. And so, from between light and the sound, that is what creates all of creation, which we are known as the life force. And some people call it prana. That's usually when the baby comes out of the womb and it takes its first breath. That first breath, that's when the prana comes in. That's when the life force comes in to the child, and they're breathing now this life force within the physical form. So it's very interesting. You want to go a little bit deeper. Some souls incarnate right when the egg and the sperm come together, and others usually kind of hang out and wait for a little while because they want to make sure the body can sustain itself, it's going to live. And some souls will just jump in right when it's in the birth canal, because then they're like, okay, I'm ready for this. So it just depends on the soul. Some souls like to be in the womb and experience the womb. Through with regression, there's been some souls that I've read in a number of books how they said they came to Earth specifically because in many star systems, the parents don't individually raise the children. The children or souls are raised in a collective, within a group setting. And here on Earth, we kind of feel like they're almost their property, like they're ours, the children. This is my child, this is my daughter, this is my son, this is my grandson, this is my granddaughter, this is, and so we kind of like have like this tribe or type mentality, which is fine, but there's souls that come here because they want to experience having a close relationship with a mother and a father. So I just thought that was very interesting. I just threw that out there because maybe for some reason somebody needed to hear that on the show. But so the daily spiritual practice is connection and remembrance of this union with the infinite. So we're already connected. I'm not gonna, so many people feel they're disconnected, but you can't be disconnected from that which you are made of. If you're made from source, then soul is 100% source, pure source energy. That's your true identity, is a piece of source. And so, how can you be separate from source? Well, we have this illusion that we're separate from source because we have this ego, and the ego is the barrier between the soul and source. And the reason we have this is so we can feel we are a separate entity. Because we have so much union on the other side, but we come into physical form to not just physically experience this life physically, but also because we need to have this illusion of separation. It's almost like you can't appreciate the light unless you've experienced darkness. And there's many souls that come to the earth plane that have never experienced darkness before. They come from these upper dimensions, and that's part of their assignment, is to experience the density and the darkness and the corruption and all this stuff that they've only heard about in schools on the other side. But they have to experience it to really have a deeper understanding of really what betrayal is. Unless you've been betrayed, you really don't know what betrayal is. You have the concept, it's not good, but until you've literally been betrayed yourself, it's like now you know what really betrayal is, that pain, that suffering, that hurt. And so we experience so much. But as far as the connection and remembrance, there's many different ways to keep our connection. I mean, I was asked, well, what's your spiritual exercise? And I said, well, I do a variety of different things, but most of it is I'm not really disconnected because I had my self and God realization attainments once I received those, and that was while I was doing an ayahuasca sacred ceremony because I had been meditating for 20 years and I realized I couldn't get beyond the ego death and I needed a little bit of a push, and so it really wasn't me. I just set out an intention of like, well, what am I going to do here with this? And I'd been through schools and inner work and years and years and years of all this. And finally, it was actually Mother Ayahuasca that reached out to me. I heard the call. And it wasn't my first ceremony, but my second one. It just happened so naturally, these two attainments and experiences. And I said, well, why me? I thought I'd be working on them for life. And they said, because you've done your homework. And so it was time for you to have these mystical experiences on the inner. You just needed to get beyond that ego, the ego death, which is not really a death. It just temporarily slides the ego aside, turns it off, so we can cross the veil and have these mystical experiences and come back. But with regards to this connection and remembrance, if you're already, just to know you're already connected. And it's just the ego that makes us feel disconnected because this is the world of the ego, the physical reality, the mind. And but when you get up into these upper dimensions, there is no mind, there is no ego, there's just oneness. And so just kind of knowing the whole parameters of how things work, I think really helps people sort out a lot of this stuff. What am I feeling? If I'm feeling loneliness, it could be you're homesick. That's what I always say. Whenever I feel loneliness, I feel like I'm homesick, that I'm experiencing homesickness because I miss being on the other side and where I'm familiar with or dimensions of origin. So it may not have anything to do with being lonely on the outside. It's the mind that perceives it as, oh, I need outward company. But really, it could be the soul's just feeling homesickness. And but just remembering it's just this illusion that we're separate while we're in this physical reality, and that's what the ego's job is. is to have this separation so that we can go off to school. It's kind of like we separate from our parents when we go off to school. We can't be with our parents all the time, whether it's elementary, junior high, high school, college. But parents are always happy when we come back from school and what'd you learn? And so yeah, it's very, very similar to that.
Well, Nancy, this has been wonderful. I am so enjoying it. I can't wait to come back and have you explain more from Ascendance. This is a great book. I love it, and I want to learn more about it. So, all you listeners, please like, subscribe, share. Go back and look at previous interviews and episodes with Dr. Nancy. She has so much wisdom nuggets to share from her experiences, her meditations, her travels, etc. And we love having you here. Again, like, subscribe, and share. And Dr. Nancy, we'll see you on the next episode.
Yes, you
Say
will. Goodbye,
bye.
everyone.